Welcome back to the Vital Cast. Today, I want to talk to you about attention that I think most high achieving leaders are quietly walking around with, even if they would never put it quite like this. And that tension is, who are you really? I was asked this question a couple of weeks ago, actually, at a networking event, and I was in conversation with someone that I had just met. And as I tend to do, I got deep pretty fast, but when he asked me this question, who are you? I struggled to answer. I didn't want a typical response of a role or a job title, nor did I want to get that deep with my real response of, well, naturally, I am a fractal representation of a multidimensional personality living in a probable reality of which there are many. I mean, I couldn't totally freak him out. This question of who you are really is really an ineffable one. And it's the one who emerges in those quiet, unwatched moments. I know for me, it's on a Sunday afternoon on the couch, just writing. Maybe for you, it's 10 minutes before bed or on an early morning walk before the day claims you. If you've ever caught a glimpse of that version of yourself, the softer, freer, more honest, more you, and wondered, where does she go the rest of the week? Well, this video then is for you. I want to talk about the gap between those two versions, why it exists, what it costs us, both individually and collectively, and what it actually looks like and feels like to start closing it without blowing up your entire life. So let's get into it. Let me set the scene. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm sitting on my sofa, wearing something comfortable, and this late spring light is doing what it does, dancing off the windows at this hour, and I'm doing what I love most, which is inspired writing. As I said, this is my happy place, and this is where I am fully creatively expressed, where my soul literally gets fed without any concern for my inbox or my makeupless face. No one is watching, and for an hour or two, I stop performing and time just disappears. The version of me who emerges in those quiet hours isn't curated. She isn't impressive or useful to anyone. And honestly, in the past, I would have felt some kind of guilt about that. Like, I should be writing more concretely about my clients' problems and the solutions that I can offer them. Just packaging it up in a way that I could monetize or that's just more direct. But what I've come to realize is that this version of me who's just flowing inspired and sharing what's on her heart and mind is the most real me that there is. And if you've ever paused in a moment like that and quietly wondered, who is this? And why does she keep disappearing the rest of the week? Well, welcome to the club. Now, I want to give you a name for what we're describing here because I think it actually helps. A writer that I follow here on Substack and YouTube named Dan Coe wrote an essay a few weeks ago where he names this exact dynamic. He says there are two versions of you walking around right now. The one who shows up at work, in meetings, maybe it's the one in the school pickup line or dinner with your in-laws. And then there's the one who only emerges in the unwatched, quiet moments. He claims that that gap between those two versions is the most important problem in your life. And he calls it the identity lifestyle fit. It's the same idea as product market fit that entrepreneurs, innovators are seeking, except the product is you and the market is how you live. Before you have it, he says, you're in a constant but quiet war with your own life. After you have it, the work you do feeds the person that you're becoming. Wow. When I read those words, I just exhaled because someone had finally given language to something that I'd really been grappling with in my coaching sessions, in therapy sessions, and in conversations with friends and family for years without ever quite landing on what to call it. So that's the framing. Two versions of you, one performing, one real. And the gap between them is the most important thing. But abstract framings don't actually move us, stories do. So let me get a little bit more specific with a story. Last week, I was on a coaching session with a client of mine who is a brilliant, accomplished woman. We were shaking the trees, as I like to call it, really just excavating the patterns that are no longer serving her, as well as the agreements that she'd been making with her own life that had quietly stopped fitting. And right in the middle of that session, she stopped. She looked at me and she said, "I've been trapped in a performance for years." Now, I want you to sit with that line for a second, because here is a woman who, by every external measure, is winning. She had the accolades. She built and sold her company and is financially free. She has the kind of life that other people look at and assume must feel incredible. And yet, what she was naming with this quiet exhaustion that I obviously recognize because I have certainly felt it in my own body, that was the gap between the version of her that the world keeps applauding and the version of her who actually wants to be running her own life. That's what identity lifestyle fit looks like when it's missing. And I want to be honest with you, because this isn't theoretical for me. I wrote about my own version of this, in fact, just last month in an essay called "Life is Not a Dress Rehearsal or a Performance." A coach asked me where I felt most fully expressed in my life, and I sat with that question and realized just how few moments in my life I've let myself be entirely unperformed. I've been so conditioned to a lifestyle, to a way of being that isn't actually me, that for a long time I couldn't even recognize. The real me riding on the couch on Sunday afternoon. And I cried when I realized that. It made me very sad. However, I'm starting to catch more glimpses of her and close that gap myself as I have been building a business that is truly a reflection of my ongoing personal evolution. And what a blessing that is. What a gift, by the way, when your work and your becoming get to be the same thing. And even with all of that, honestly, those old programs are still running underneath. I catch them all the time. They don't just disappear because you can see them, because you get an insight or some new awareness of them. So when I tell you that this is the most common experience that my clients arrive with, even when they think they came to coaching for clarity on their next professional chapter, their next move, I'm telling you because it's true for them. And it's true for me. And based on the conversations that I've been having lately, I think it might be true for you too. That's why I called this video Mind the Gap, because naming the gap is step one. Walking across it is what comes next. But before we get to the walking, I want to widen the lens a little bit, because this is not only personal. We are living through one of those moments when an entire paradigm is dissolving. It feels like the institutions that we once trusted to give us a sense of identity, belonging, and direction, like religious institutions, corporations, governments, schools, many of them are publicly cracking. Look around. You can definitely feel it. And some of that cracking is generative, right? The cracks let the light in. And some of it's very corrosive, because what once held us together is no longer holding. Either way, I feel like we're sort of in between these two worlds. And in a moment like this, a stable sense of self, the kind that exists beyond the roles that you play and the achievements on your resume, is no longer a nice to have. It is essential. It is the ground that we walk on. And I want to repeat that because I think it's the whole point. A stable sense of self beyond the roles, beyond the achievements, is the ground that we walk on. Because if you don't know who you are, independent of what you do every day, every external shakeup, of which there are many and there will continue to be many more, not fewer. It feels like an existential threat because internally it actually is one. The leaders who will move through this next decade and beyond with any kind of grace are not ones with the cleverest strategy. They are the ones who have done the inner work to know who they are when the strategy doesn't work anymore, when that title goes away, when the job goes away, when the institution that used to give them belonging or some sort of backing stops holding them. That's the work of closing the gap. And in order to do that work, you have to be willing to step. The Londoners have a phrase that you hear over the loudspeaker every time the doors open on the tube, which is mind the gap. 3 words: look down, see the space between the platform and the train, and step knowingly across it. And I think that it is the most fitting instruction for that moment that we are in, because we are indeed stepping from one paradigm to another, both individually and collectively. And there is a real gap in between. You can pretend it isn't there and you can trip. You can stand frozen on the platform and refuse to step, refuse to make a move, or you can see it clearly and step across it with both eyes open. And I do want to take some pressure off here, by the way. There's no final destination in this. There's no arrival at a final train stop. There's just the train moving and you on it, getting closer with every honest moment to that version of yourself that you forgot you were. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Natalie, this all sounds beautiful and idealistic, but I have a mortgage, I have kids. My company is not going to give me a paid sabbatical so that I can find myself sitting on the couch on a Sunday afternoon just being. And I hear you. I want to be very clear about what I am not saying. I am definitely not a proponent of blowing up your life, as I said earlier in this video. I'm not saying quit your job, move to another country, or even drastically build a bunker. I'm not saying to make any massive life change, even if sometimes it might feel like that is the most liberating move or the most liberating possibility in the world. Trust me, I have those days too. But nothing done from a place of fear actually reflects who you really are anyway. I'm also not saying that you should entirely reject the version of you that's been keeping one foot in the old world, where that performative version of you lives. There are real challenges to prioritize in life. We all have bills, bottom lines, competing schedules to juggle, people who depend on us. And the adaptations of yours have served a purpose. The ones that created the performance. They're probably, in fact, what's been driving you towards high performance and earning you the external praise or accolades. But standing on the platform forever, never moving, is not the answer either. We cannot deny that misalignment forever. Trust me on this, that quiet sense only gets louder. So the invitation is simply this. Start acknowledging the version of you that you have shut down outside of those fleeting Sunday afternoon moments or whenever they are for you. Start getting acquainted with that version of yourself. What does she enjoy when no one is watching and no one is actually paying her? Is it writing? Is it walking? Cooking something that takes 3 hours? Dare I say, is it when you're doing nothing? That question asked sincerely is the beginning of the path. So I want to leave you with this. Unlike Dan, I don't actually see the gap as this problem to solve. I don't think there's some final state where you've nailed this identity lifestyle fit and you graduate. I think it's simply a decision that we make over and over again to walk what I would call the path of remembering. Because the version of you who only emerges on the sofa on Sunday afternoons isn't lost or broken. She isn't waiting for a course or a book or a coach or the next paradigm shift to bring her back to you. She's been there the whole time. She's been there the whole time. You just stopped letting yourself be her. And so when you catch a glimpse, don't look away. That's the train pulling in. That's home calling. So mind the gap and step. If this resonated, I also write long form essays every week on my Substack called The Vital Life, and you can follow my work there as well. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.